Hi, I'm Maddie. Have you ever considered why the sea is salty? On average, our oceans consist of about 3.5% salt. That equates to a total of 50 million billion tonnes of salt in our seas, give or take a pinch. If you were to pile all of that salt onto the Earth's land, it would create a layer 152 metres high. So how did it get there? Well, some salts dissolved into the ocean from rock and sediment on the seafloor. Other salts escaped from volcanic vents deep beneath the waves, but most of it comes from the land around us. Rainwater dissolves minerals and salt from the rocks on dry land, so as rainwater makes its way downriver, it collects more and more salt. The amount of salt in this fresh water is still tiny, about 220 times less than seawater, but it is there, and this salt is then deposited into the sea when the river has run its course. Importantly, the salt then becomes more concentrated in the sea, because the sun's heat distills the water from the ocean surface, leaving the salt behind. Across the globe, 4 billion tonnes of salt are deposited into our oceans every year from rivers, so surely our seas must be getting saltier. Certainly the oceans have got a lot saltier since their primeval beginnings, but now just as much salt is being deposited on the ocean floor as is coming from the rivers, so it's reached a general equilibrium. However, there are differences in salinity across the globe. Towards the poles, seawater is diluted by melting ice caps and heavy precipitation. Meanwhile, in areas bordering the equator where it's hot, evaporation rates exceed the amount of rainfall, so water here is much saltier. And there is evidence to suggest that these differences are increasing. As sea temperatures rise, parts of the Atlantic have already shown greater evaporation rates and with it, a rise in salinity levels. This may not seem important, but the more salt in the ocean, the greater its density and the slower it will circulate, meaning that important marine nutrients won't get distributed around the globe. But interestingly, it's not just your everyday sodium chloride that is gathered by rainfall and freshwater systems. Rivers actually carry and deposit more calcium than chloride. So why is it our seas aren't full of calcium? It's because living organisms like mollusks, crustaceans and coral use huge amounts of calcium in its various forms to build their body structure. Without this influx of salt and minerals from our rivers and streams, life would certainly be very different in our oceans. Please subscribe to Earth Unplugged for more amazing stats from the natural world, and we'll see you soon. Bye! What about a hurricane? How much water is in one of those? Well, they are huge and have a much higher water density. So much so that their average water content has been estimated at 50,000 metric tonnes.
We think of our planet as a watery place, the blue planet. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered in water, and in fact water is unique as the only natural compound that occurs in all three states. But if we scooped it all up and sculpted that water into a sphere, how big would that sphere be?